What's happening, Internet fam? So, a lot of people are very concerned about the economy, given that almost all businesses are closed and shut down during the coronavirus shutdown. But I want to make clear it's not almost all businesses. Giant corporations are largely still open. Walmart is open, Best Buy is open. A lot of these big corporate stores are still open. It's really the small family-owned businesses that are getting hurt the most by this whole process, which you could expect because giant corporations pay lobbyists to pay our government and make sure that their interests and needs are met first, not the needs of the people or small family-owned businesses, which are continuing to be decimated, which is why we can see the continuing destruction of the middle class in this country, as the middle class has been actively hunted and destroyed for the last 50, 60 years at least. It's interesting too because all of this is happening in a context of complete unconstitutionality. The Constitution doesn't allow for any of these activities that are being done and performed during the quarantine. Trump just signed another executive order granting further emergency powers to the government. And of course, this is after they already renewed the Patriot Act, which, as we know, is a huge and horrendous obstruction of justice against the American people, your civil liberties, everything else. So, I mean, at this point, this government is so far off the rails, the fact that they haven't put us all in gulags or something like that already is a little bit surprising. I mean, they have already filled out all the powers that they need to do so. And what's most troubling about this is a video that a friend of mine sent me on Facebook. I'm going to leave my friend anonymous because I think he wants to be anonymous because he's scared of our government, as he well should be. And let's just go ahead and play this video so you can see it. These are tanks on a railway in downtown LA. This is downtown Los Angeles. So unless you know of an invading force that's planning on attacking Los Angeles, I want you to think about who all these tanks are being prepped for. And this train goes on forever. I mean, they have so much military might, this country, this government, this illegal, unconstitutional government has so much military might. And the fact that they're flaunting it now clearly in downtown LA on this railroad in such a manner shows that they have some intent on using it on somebody. And I don't think they're going to be using it on China or Mexico or Canada. I don't think Russia's planning on invading the U.S. anytime soon. So who are these tanks going to be used for? I think we already know who they're going to be used for. And of course, this is in the context of continuing to not allow the United States citizens to purchase arms and ammo and weapons and able to protect themselves. The Second Amendment is continuing to being infringed upon by unconstitutional, illegal laws all across the country, both at the state level, the municipal level, and of course at the national level as well. Congress has another bill up right now trying to further restrict and infringe upon our rights to buy guns. And once again, we all know that the language of the Second Amendment is shall not be infringed. Every rule that has been passed by the government in the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years has been a gross infringement on our rights to protect ourselves. The Brady Bill is unconstitutional and illegal. Every single gun act that's been passed since then is unconstitutional, illegal. And the result is more deaths. Anytime you restrict people's access to guns, more people die. That math is unassailable. If you look at Chicago, New York, and LA, where there's the most gun violence, which, by the way, is predominantly gang-related. So unless you're in a gang or living in a neighborhood where there are a lot of street gangs, chances are you are not going to be harmed by a gun. But you will not be able to protect yourselves in Chicago, LA, or New York, which have the most restrictive gun laws already in the nation. And guess what? That's where the most violence occurs because people are unable to protect themselves. In states and municipalities where you can't protect yourself, violent crime goes down massively. Florida opened up the gun rights and they made it so you don't need a license to concealed carry. It's a stand your ground state. So they're very liberal and flexible about people's rights to own guns. And since they instituted that, violent crime has gone down massively in Florida. This is something you're not being told by the mainstream media. The mainstream media is putting everybody in a panic over this coronavirus thing, which, by the way, there have only been 1,000 fatalities in the United States so far for coronavirus. And keep in mind that annually about 12,000 people per year die of influenza, i.e. the flu, i.e. the common cold. So right now we're at 1/12 the normal death rate for the flu from coronavirus. Now, is it more infectious? Is it more often lethal when people get it? Apparently so. But again, most of these statistics can't actually be vetted by anybody as an individual or a school or a family or a small business, because the information you're being given is from large government agencies such as the CDC, the FDA, etc. These are large government institutions that have already been completely corrupted with corporate money. The revolving door between giant corporations and government agencies is certainly no more apparent than at the CDC, although it's all the government agencies. We want to talk about the SEC, the FDA, the IRS, the Federal Reserve. All of these large government agencies are horrendously corrupt because the leaders from these giant corporations, such as CEOs and stuff like that, will immediately become the chairman of these large government agencies once they retire. And they get paid massive, massive bonuses and salaries for already having rode through all the legislation that those giant corporations wanted previously. That's why there's absolutely no way to sue a company for damage for in this case that your child is damaged from a vaccine, for example. And vaccine damage happens all the time. It happens all the time. You don't hear about it on the news. The corporate media is not going to tell you about this, but children are damaged by vaccines all the time. And when those children are damaged by vaccines, you can't go and sue that company who made the vaccine. Even though the vaccine is including known neurotoxins in almost every case. Almost every vaccine has aluminum in it as a preservative. That aluminum is what causes Alzheimer's and dementia later in life. Almost every vaccine has fluoride in it. Fluoride is what causes fluorosis of the bones, which is what leads to so many elderly people breaking their hips, which is a very common cause of death among the elderly. When they break a hip, generally their mobility goes down, their health declines, everything goes south as soon as they break a hip. The reason why so many old people are breaking their hips now is because of the fluoride we're putting in the water, because of fluoride we're putting in vaccines. They also put formaldehyde in the vaccines, and they also put, of course, parts of dead babies from abortions. They call it fetal cell tissue, stuff like that. Which, I mean, never mind the disgusting idea that they're doing this, that they're injecting other people with parts of dead babies. Just never mind how just disgusting and unethical that is, just from a basic human common decency standpoint. The simple fact is there are very real health ramifications for that as well. And none of this has been adequately studied because, again, these corporations are not they're not going to fund the studies that are going to protect you from their products. They're only going to fund the studies that absolve them of any possible guilt in the future. That is how the system has been working. That is how the system does work. And it's absolutely disgusting. Now, apparently, Congress just passed the bill that's going to allow American citizens to get $1,200 during this quarantine so that they can still survive. However, there's quite a lot of provisos and quid pro quos. First of all, you have to have filed taxes in the previous year. So once again, you're disenfranchising everybody who's homeless, unemployed, underemployed, didn't file for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't make enough money to file. And of course, we're also going to not get a check if you owe anything to your former spouse for child support. And again, does not matter whether that spouse has broken every visitation violation, whether that former spouse has continued to abuse your children against your will, whether you're currently in litigation with that ex-spouse. None of those things matter. You will be denied access to that $1,200 check. So how many single fathers now are in this country that cannot work because of the coronavirus and also can't get the government assistance check to kind of float along and try to stay alive during this process. There are millions of fathers in this country like that, and a few mothers too. It does happen to mothers, but the statistics are way less for mothers. Our system is still completely misandrous and favors women over men, especially in the family court system. It's literally like a 9-to-1 ratio, or like an 8-to-1 ratio, and the other 1% going to grandparents or CPS or foster homes or something like that. And again, who is all this benefiting? This is all benefiting further government totalitarian overreach. They're trying to use this crisis, and again, this is a crisis where much less people have died than the flu so far. Okay, granted, potentially this is more dangerous than the flu. I don't know. I'm not a medical health expert. I personally haven't met or known anybody who has died of coronavirus. I don't have a friend of a friend who has died of coronavirus. Now, to say that it's not going to happen, I don't know. I can't predict the future. It could happen. There's a lot of evidence that patient zero for this virus was actually somebody high up in the U.S. military who's working on biological weapons. So this virus could, in fact, be very dangerous and very lethal because it has been weaponized to be so. There's plenty of evidence for that. I invite you to go down the rabbit hole on that one. And look who's staying open. Amazon's staying open. Whole Foods is staying open. Walmart is staying open. All these giant corporations are all staying open. The big giant corporations are almost all staying open. There's a few that are closed down. Ross is closed, so poor people can't buy clothes. Not that they have the money to buy clothes anyway, since they can't go to work, since almost all businesses are shut down. And all of these issues, really, all of them are symptoms of one root cause, the true sickness, which is the horrendous indoctrination our public is receiving under the mass corporate media. Corporate media has lied about everything for decades, maybe a whole century or more than a century. I don't know. Even before the advent of television, corporate media was lying on newspapers and magazines and books and on the radio and in the silent films. The propaganda against the American populace and against the voting public has been outright 100% massive for a century. And it's only gotten worse as that time goes on. And there's almost nothing we can do about that because now corporations own all of the means of communication. Corporations own Facebook. Corporations own YouTube. Corporations own Google. Corporations own your entire internet connection. So you can be silenced. Guaranteed you can be silenced. And now with the advent of 5G, which 5G can target very specific locations if you have your cell phone with you, and they know where your location is, that 5G radiation can be boosted and pointed right at you specifically based on where your cell phone is. So you could be under an intense 5G radiation bombardment. 5G, by the way, operates at 60 hertz, which affects the oxygen molecule. It makes it difficult for your red blood cells to absorb oxygen. So basically, they can now suffocate you from a distance with a cellular signal. That's what 5G is for. And during this crisis, of course, they're installing more 5G, more places, especially in public places, such as schools. Because Lord knows we need to have absolute control of our education system, of the students at those schools, of the parents who might go to those schools to pick up their students, etc. This is a way for the government to control whether you can breathe or not. That's what 5G is. 5G is government control of your breathing. People don't seem to understand that. They haven't done the research. They haven't looked into it. I'm a technologist. I've been following this for a long time. There's a lot of evidence that 5G is potentially very harmful. In fact, all cellular radiation is extremely harmful to the human being, particularly male fertility. Male fertility rates have gone down massively, and there's a huge amount of evidence that has to do with cellular radiation. So, okay, that's a lot to take in. I'm already at over 14 minutes. I wanted to do like a 5-minute thing. This is where we're at now. They're not going to let you have guns. They're not going to let you protect yourself or your family. They're not going to let you run a small business. They're not going to let you go to work. And now they are making it so that you can't even leave the house. They're potentially going to be initiating martial law. They have already passed all the legislation to be able to do so, regardless of the fact that all of it is completely unconstitutional, of course. Everything that the federal government does is unconstitutional because the federal government itself is, to a large extent, with its current overreach and the massive amounts of federal agencies that are all harmful for human health. All of them. All the federal, I mean, there might be a couple that are okay. National Endowment for the Arts, I'm okay with you. NASA, kind of okay with you, sort of. I think it needs to be more transparent and more open to the public and more vetted by researchers and other scientists elsewhere in the world who are generally not given access to most of the data that NASA has. So very much a black box where they're just throwing money in and we're not actually getting a lot of answers out of that. So all of these other federal institutions, though, except for a few minor ones, like I mentioned, are all doing irreparable harm to the economy and to the American people and to our families and children. The FCC, the FDA, the CDC, all the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, all of these government agencies are destroying the fabric of modern society. They've already been destroying the fabric of modern society for almost a century. For decades, this has been going on. And the mainstream media is the number one enemy of the people. They have got everybody in this ridiculous panic, ready to give away all the rights, thinking that they're going to be okay because they're going to get a check for $1,200 by a government that just keeps printing cash. That's how they're going to pay for this. Unrestricted quantitative easing. They're just going to continue to keep printing cash, making sure that every one of those dollars that they're giving you is worth less every day. Every one of those dollars that you're earning, if you are still employed by some miracle. Not many people I know are, but if you are still employed by some miracle, every dollar you're making is going to be worth less. And the mainstream media is acting like the only solution we have to these problems isn't to start eliminating all this federal government overreach and corruption and actually destroying, actively and intentionally destroying these corporations in favor of small family-owned businesses. Instead of that, they are advocating for Bernie Sanders and socialism. If you want to see where that leads, watch any documentary about Chairman Mao, watch any documentary about Joseph Stalin. Socialism has consequences, and they're not good. They're really not good. Way worse than the situation we're in now. Although we're clearly headed to that situation, as witnessed by the giant line of tanks heading into Los Angeles, as if that's necessary for any reason. I mean, talk about a robbery from the people. That's your tax dollars at work. Your tax dollars are paying for those tanks to be loaded onto the train and for that train to be driven into LA. All of your tax dollars are being used to that. The government steals your money. 70, 80% of your money, if you add sales tax, income tax, estate tax, if you add capital gains, if you add all these different taxes up together, the government's stealing about 80% of your money. And they're using that money to build robots to murder children in the third world, to continue to corrupt our health system, our technology system, our economic system in favor of giant corporations and against individuals, individual liberties, families, small businesses, and anything that you might actually care about in your community. The government is doing everything they can to destroy the things you care and love, you care about and love, in favor of these giant corporations. And they're giving you the option of Chairman Mao, Bernie Sanders, or continued corporate corruption, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or any one of these giant corrupt corporate asshats that are destroying this country, that have already effectively destroyed most of this country, mainly, again, through the mainstream media, instilling an absolute panic and FOMO in the entire population for a disease that so far has only killed 1,000 people in this country. It's 350, 360 million people in this country, 400 million people in this country. Counting undocumented workers or illegal aliens or whatever you want to call them, we don't really know how many people live in this country. I mean, my guess is the estimates are way off. But so far, out of that 400 million people, 1,000 people have died. And for that, they're going to close all small businesses, lay off all non-essential workers, although somehow Best Buy is essential. as if they're high-priced electronics are good. Like, without those, you're going to die. You're going to die without that high-priced, overpriced TV that was made by a slave in China. Now all of our goods and are still being manufactured by slave labor in China. So that's what these corporations are doing. They're using slavery to build your goods, ship them over here, and then charge you 100 to 1,000 times what they're actually worth, what they actually cost to make. And then using that money to buy your congressmen, senators, and presidents, and vice presidents, everybody in the government, and even the judicial system. I mean, our judges are so corrupt now, it's ridiculous. The Supreme Court, horrendously corrupt. I mean, Clarence Thomas was a horrible choice as a Supreme Court justice. Every Supreme Court justice we've got right now is garbage. The last one who was worth anything at all, and he wasn't great, but he had some value, was Anthony Scalia, who died very mysteriously with no autopsy after calling into question some of the Pizzagate stuff. So, whether you want to decide the Pizzagate is real or not, there is a body count associated with it. So to me, that indicates that at least part of the story might have been true. And Jeffrey Epstein is just the tip of that iceberg. But also look into the murder of, alleged natural death of Judge Anthony Scalia in the Supreme Court. Now, these people are murdering Supreme Court justices. They're murdering high-profile prisoners that are already in custody. They will do anything to stay in power. And this Me Too movement, all of this has just been such a fake, hyped media situation that's not actually protecting women and children. You want to protect women and children? Give everybody a gun. Give everybody a gun. Literally everybody a gun. The statistics on that are vast. They're overwhelming. In a society where everybody owns a gun, there's almost no violence. Almost none. Especially against women and children. But look up that math yourself. I keep saying this on my channel. I keep having to argue about this with people who don't know because they're ignorant, because they've been educated by our government school system and the mass corporate media, who's been lying to you for a century. Look up Operation Mockingbird. Most of the large media figures you know and love, I mean, a lot of these people love Anderson Cooper. This is a liar who definitely worked for the CIA, and now he's on your TV every night telling you what the situation really is, how you should respond, how you should feel, and most of you are eating it up. Turn off the corporate media. That is the number one thing we have to do as individuals. Just turn it off. Don't watch the news. Don't watch Fox News. Don't watch MSNBC. Don't watch any of this corporate garbage. If it's coming from a corporation, don't buy it. Don't watch it. Don't listen to it. Don't buy or support any corporations. Stop going to Starbucks. Stop going to McDonald's. All their food is toxic for you anyway. You're getting diabetes. You're getting heart disease. You're getting cancer. By supporting these giant corporations who are absolutely destroying every civil liberty anybody in this country has ever enjoyed. And they're doing it by corrupting politicians through lobbyists. And they're taking your money and profiting billions per year and using some of those profits to continue to purchase politicians and run corporate media in such a way that their power and control over you and your family is unassailable. So, investment advice from Rise Master No News. First of all, don't take my investment advice. I usually make funny videos with characters and all kinds of stuff. I'm not a serious investment advice person. But what I can say is we have no idea whether Bitcoin or these cryptocurrencies are going to go up or down from here. We have no idea. Currently, the whole market is down and the whole cryptocurrency market is down. In fact, the entire global economy is down. The price of oil is cheaper than it's been in a long time. And oil is like a necessity that we need to live and work and everything and run our farms and everything at this point. I wish it wasn't. Yes, I favor an all-electric future. We are obviously heading there. But again, only in these very slow baby steps so that the corporations can maximize their profit every step of the way. They're not just going to do a quick paradigm shift and switch to some technology that makes all of their old stuff obsolete. Because then they can't sell all their old stuff. They got to sell all their old stuff first and then gradually, slowly migrate over to the new technology for profit so that they can continue to control this government and everybody in it. All right, Internet fam, I don't know what else to say today. Thanks for tuning in. If you watch this, if you have comments or ideas or thoughts, I'd love to hear back from you. I'm very curious about what your thoughts are about where we're headed as a society, whether we have any way out of this corporate dystopia that we're in right now. I still think there's a lot of possible positive technologies coming up in the immediate future that could liberate us from most of this horrendous dystopia that we're living under. However, they're currently not being embraced by the public. They're currently not being supported by any kind of mainstream media, certainly. And it's very concerning that we're heading this other path where all of your data is owned by giant corporations. Google owns all your photos, all your emails, all your files. Apple owns your whole music library. You can't even listen to music without like paying some corporate service. You know, nobody owns their own CDs anymore. Nobody has their own MP3 collection anymore. It's all this corporate streaming service, you know, because it's convenient. You know, we've thrown away all of our civil liberties for convenience because the corporate media has decided that's the way that they're going to maximize their profits and maximize their control over society. And we've got to do better, people. We've got to do better. Stop giving corporations your money. Please stop giving corporations money. All right. Take it easy, Internet fam.